Well, good evening, Life Church. Thank you for joining us. Tonight is a special night because I have some special people that I want to introduce to you. Drew and Skylar Gadd are here with us. We haven't been able to meet as a church yet, but you are going to meet them very, very soon. And before we met, I wanted to introduce all of you to them as they have moved down here recently from, of all places, Ohio. We do let people from Ohio in our church every now and then. But if you don't get it, I'm from Michigan. So we are excited that they are here. They moved, when did you guys move down here?
June 12th.
June 12th. And, I want, over the next few moments, I just want to kind of have them introduce themselves to all of you and kind of tell us how they heard about Life Church and why they're down here with us now. So, go ahead. Who wants to start here?
I'll
Drew,
start
Skylar,
off.
you start? Okay.
So my name is Drew Gadd. I'm 21 years old, and just a little bit about me and us. We've been together going on 6 years. This Sunday, actually, we've been in a relationship for 6 years, which is awesome. We're high school sweethearts. We met at church. I grew up in a Christian home. I got saved at a young age when I was 6 years old. Funny story about that. My dad used to tell me a lot of stories throughout the Bible when I was young. And one night I told him, I said, "Dad, I want to get half saved." And he's like, "What?" And I was like, "I want to get half saved." And he's like, "Hold on, son. Let me here. I'll bring you into my room and we'll talk." And what ended up being is he led me to the Lord. I gave my life to Christ when I was 6 years old. But living in a Christian home, I grew up in church. And getting saved at a young age, I just played the church game. Even though I was saved, I really didn't take it serious until I was in middle school. And that's when we started going to a new church where her and I met, Lindenwall Baptist in Fairfield, Ohio. And that's when I really started taking my relationship for Christ seriously, when I was in middle school. Rededicated my life. 2014 is actually the year that we both met, was the year that we both surrendered into the ministry. And then 2 years later, surrendered into the full-time ministry, and ended up God calling us to missions. And that kind of what started us kind of, I don't know, about thinking about, moving. But at the same time, with us being in ministry, not being in ministry, it was just one of those things where God kind of just started leading us towards Orlando, which we can kind of get here in a second, but I'll have you kind of tell your story a little bit before we get into that.
Yeah, so I was also saved when I was really young. I got saved at about 4th grade, somewhere in elementary school. Kind of more just fearful, didn't know anything about following the Lord, what that meant. I just knew I didn't want to go to hell, and that is why I got saved super young.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's great.
So flash forward to high school, I rededicated my life to the Lord my sophomore year of high school. And then the next year, we met, and I surrendered into the ministry. And so we surrendered in the same year. I was kind of just questioning the Lord, like, what do you want for my life? I wasn't raised in a Christian home, so I didn't know what a lot of this meant. I didn't even know what surrendering into the ministry meant. I just knew I wanted to do it, and so I did, and here we are. So
tell us, so where exactly in Ohio are you guys from?
Cincinnati. Well, north of Cincinnati, Fairfield, to be exact. Fairfield and Hamilton area.
Okay, all righty. Tell us, so how did you hear about Life Church, and what kind of led you here?
It's a long story, but what happened was my parents were taking my sister, Elena, to BBC, and that weekend, Skylar and I were house-sitting for my parents and watching my parents' dogs. And that weekend, my parents' dogs were absolutely sick. And so her and I got frustrated.
I don't know that anybody should have a dog myself. Just playing. I know a
Dogs
lot of you
awesome,
are dog lovers, but yeah.
The worst part is when they get sick. And they were like completely sick. And it was disgusting. And we got frustrated. And so we were like, we got to get out of the house. So we went to Cracker Barrel. And we had some friends actually on vacation. I was scrolling through Facebook. And I saw them in Florida. And I was like, babe, what if we left to Florida? And she's like, don't tempt me because I don't think I'd come back. And in that moment, we thought we were just kidding around and dreaming and looking at different places to live, like in North Carolinas. And for some reason, that next day, God put Orlando in our hearts out of nowhere. She contacted somebody down here that we knew who used to go to our church back in Hamilton, Ohio, named Britt Nelson, now Britt Kelly, now it's Britt Nelson, there you go. And so she's like, hey, how do you like Orlando? And she's like, I love it. And she's like, how do you like your church? And she's like, well, we go to First Baptist of Orlando. It's a mega church. And at the time, I was like kind of entertaining it. Both of us kind of were entertaining it a little bit. But as we continue to pray about it, we just thought, yeah, I don't think we're meant to be at a mega church. But for some reason, Orlando still was on our hearts. And so what I decided to do, obviously with God calling me, putting missions on both of our hearts, I started contacting missions agencies down here in Orlando, different churches, to see if there was any job opportunities. Nothing popped up for 2 weeks, and I started getting in a depressing state. And my brother-in-law, Hugh, goes to BBC, and I was talking to him. I opened up to him. I was like, hey, man, I think God's putting Orlando on Skylar and I's hearts for some rare reason. And he's like, well, funny story. I actually know a couple who used to go to Parkcrest he started a church about 3 years ago called Life Church. I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, I think that would be a perfect and awesome opportunity for the both of you to be a part of a plant church. And so I decided to contact Life Church on their portal, on their page. This is when hurricane was coming through. And so I pretty much put like a snapshot of our testimony in the portal of their website. And Brant contacted me 2 days later, first person to ever contact me. And he's like, hey, sorry, we were preparing for a hurricane, but we would love to meet with you and Skylar. And then we met over FaceTime. And that's kind of how it all started.
Yeah, you just never know. You know, sometimes we get emails and you're like, what's up with this? But it was pretty cool. Yeah, he reached out, followed up, and so it was pretty cool. So
it was awesome.
Yeah. And so from there, then you guys came down and visited us wasn't it the end of October? Mm-hmm. Yeah, after the hurricane and everything. And they spent a weekend, and they just fell in love with Life Church, didn't you?
Absolutely.
At least you're supposed to say yes. Yeah, good, yeah. But yeah, Life Church is great. And we were glad that you guys were down here with us, and we had just moved to Water Spring. Mm-hmm. And then you guys went back to Ohio and weren't quite sure what the next steps were, or really if this is what God wanted in your life. Mm-hmm. So what happened between last October and June 12th when you actually moved here? What was kind of the thing that was like, okay, this is exactly where God wants us to be?
So kind of just starting at the journey of getting here back in October, we knew that Satan was attacking the whole trip. Drew, who doesn't really worry a whole lot, I'm more of the worrier. He started to have panic attacks on the trip, and then our car and our plane tickets fell through, and it was just all these different things that Satan was not wanting us to come here. Mm-hmm. So after we had made our trip, we knew that it was made clear that God wanted us to come and have just clarity on what he was calling us to do. So from October to June, we were pretty much just trying to figure out what God exactly wants, the backgrounds of us having jobs and a place to live. So Drew had actually found a job, and he lost that job because of the pandemic. And then what about a month before we moved, he had found another job. And so thankfully I was able to work from home for a little bit. And so it was kind of like we just knew, even amidst the chaos, we just had to be obedient no matter what was getting thrown at us. We knew what the Lord wanted, and we just had to be faithful.
Yeah, Satan was throwing a lot of opposition in front of us, and we clearly saw that. When we first got here in October, and I don't even think we had to come here to know that this is where God was calling us, even though we'd never met you guys yet.
We're pretty cool people.
You guys
to
are.
be around, so especially Ron, right?
Ron's a cool guy.
Ron's pretty cool.
And so we got here and we fell in love through all the opposition. that Satan put our way. We fell in love with Life Church, you guys, the people, the community. And when we got back, that's when we were like, all right, let's put all the logistics together. And it was tough. I'm not gonna lie. There was a lot that not only Satan put opposition, but God allowed it. And he really tested our faith. And it was when I got that new job that I thought this was awesome. It was a job that was going to allow me to work from home, get us down here, be able to provide, because Orlando's a little bit more expensive than Cincinnati. So we had to try to figure all of that out. And the pandemic hit, and I lost that job. And they told me that I would be able to get it back before we moved. And it was, I think, a month before we moved here. My boss called me, and he said, hey, Drew, I really don't think I'm going to be able to bring you back until August. And I was like, Austin, I'm moving to Orlando in like a month. I don't know how this is going to be possible. And he's like, listen, if you have to find a job, then find a job. So I just looked for any job possible. And it was in that moment where, I didn't think our faith could be tested even more. I knew that we were supposed to be here, but there was a thing that Skylar, in that moment, Skylar and I were on completely different sides. It was us trying to figure out if we were supposed to come here in June or if we were supposed to wait. Yeah. And so we ended up coming here in June, and it all worked out.
Yeah, there's nothing like walking by faith and taking those steps when you don't know what that next step's going to be. And right. God just has a way of honoring that, doesn't he? Mm-hmm. And it's been pretty incredible. Since they moved, they just kind of hit the ground running. They've kind of stepped into a role in our church that we just kind of had a hole in. It's amazing. God always provides exactly what we need. And they are focusing on college students and singles, and which is pretty cool. And they've already had some time where they've been able to get the group together and meet with them in their home over here, and they've done Zoom stuff with them. And I'll tell you this, the college kids and the singles, it was like an instant melding of hearts, which is pretty cool. Yeah. And we've got a lot of plans for the future, and we think God is going to just really, really bless this ministry in that way. And so I'm excited you guys are here. And I can't wait till all of you get to meet them in person. And it'll be just a couple more weeks, and you're going to be able to do that. So would everyone do this at Life Church? Would you pray for Drew and Skylar? Because as just about all of our church knows what it is like to move here from someplace else. And all the transitions and not having family and doing all that, those are all difficult things, and we know that. So will you pray for Drew and Skylar as they are still making really this transition here? And then pray for their ministry as they get in and they just love on college students and point them to Jesus. But thank you guys for taking that step, and we look forward to this, to see where this journey is going to lead with you guys. So. Well, I think we probably got to cut this down now. Cut it short. Well, it's not short, but we need to cut it out now. So thank you guys so much for joining tonight, and we'll see you soon.